And Kendall, go ahead.
Thanks, Congresswoman. We may have time for two more questions, but this next question comes from Coley. They ask, with school vouchers happening in Texas and the current administration trying to abolish the Department of Education, how are we going to make sure our children continue to receive adequate education?
Ooh, child, this feels like a SAT question. Um, I don't have any good answers for this. I can tell you that your voices mattered last session down in Austin as it relates to the vouchers, and it really pissed off Governor Abbott because he decided to sink millions and millions of dollars into Republicans that voted against him. But they understood, even though they never stand up against him and make sure that we expand on Medicaid. And so rural hospitals are shutting down every single day. I don't know why they're not fighting for that. But nevertheless, a lot of people lost their seats. And so, we're going to have to think smarter about this. If people live in a Republican district, then at least the Republican stands up and does the right thing on this. And then next thing you know, Abbott tries to put somebody else in, then we may have to think long and hard about how we vote and, whatever. So that's that part of it from a state perspective. So do not let up. I think that James Talarico is really kind of leading the way on this issue as a former public school teacher. He's very passionate about it. So I say make sure you're keeping up with updates from Rep. Talarico and make sure you're listening to any suggestions that he makes. So that's number one from a state level. From a federal level, again, Department of Education, this is going to end up taking an act of Congress, but they are going through the dismantling of it. We know that 50% of those that are currently at the Department of Education recently lost their jobs, but we are not only fighting in the courts, because it's great to say I'm fighting like I'm fighting in Congress. Can't say I'm really having a lot of wins in Congress, but I am fighting like hell in Congress. But when it comes to the courts, we are not only fighting, but we're winning. And so with what just happened with the Department of Education only being semi-recent, I am looking really forward to seeing kind of what the courts say as it relates to the Department of Education. But we do know that this is right out of the Project 2025 playbook. This is one of those things that we had talked about. And the other thing that's really dangerous that I need to address for those that don't understand is that when it comes down to being able to get a student loan and going through the FAFSA process, that all comes through the Department of Education. So to me, this is like the next level of making sure that only the haves have access to education, kind of like the voucher scam that they're doing on the state level, where only people that even live in places with, private schools have access to that, right? And we know that the private schools are able to say that certain people can't be allowed, but we know that the Supreme Court handed over their terrible affirmative action decision. Recently, we've seen the enrollment of people of color specifically going down in our higher education schools. And so I look at this as the only people in this country that will be afforded an opportunity at getting any level of education, it seems like, are going to be the privileged few. And that is in combination with what the state is doing as well as what's happening on the federal level. In addition to that, we know that there is funding as it relates to the school lunch program, whether it's the reduced lunch or free lunches for our kiddos, that actually comes out of the Department of Education too. So in addition to kind of the general things that we're thinking about, the dismantling of access to education, this also is going to prohibit so many people from literally so many kiddos from being able to eat. We also know that a lot of our funding for our students with disabilities, that also comes out of Department of Education. And so that funding will cease if for some reason we don't have a Department of Education. And then we already know that DoE specifically went in, and the first thing that they went out after was all of like the civil rights divisions of Department of Education. And so they deal with everything, all the civil rights violations. And so we know that our kids will have less protections overall in their schools because they've decided to dismantle this.